Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming along. My name's Colin Mumford. I provide technical support for Bayer. So if ever you phone up, email, contact us via our app for information, queries relating to our products, if you want safety data sheets, then it will be me that you'll probably be speaking to. Today I want to talk to you about innovative solutions for integrated disease management. And the points that I'd like to cover today include just a brief description of Bayer. Then I want to go on to talk about integrated disease management, leading on to fungicides, the research and development required to produce a new active ingredient, then the disease resistance management that you should be carrying out to prevent resistance build-up. Then I'll talk about the fungicide groups that are currently available to you and the active ingredients that are derived from those fungicide groups. And then I want to talk about formulation. So there's a lot I want to talk about today. And if I get time, I just want to briefly touch on Phytobac, which is another new development. So firstly, I want to talk a bit about Bayer. Bayer is 152 years old, so it's a very well-established company. It's the largest life science company, chemical manufacturer. It developed aspirin back in 1899. Other products that you may be familiar with include Berocca. It operates in 160 countries around the world and employs more than 112,000 employees. So, as you can appreciate, it is a rather large concern. It's split into a number of divisions. These are environmental science, which is our turf management, which covers turf management, crop science, healthcare, animal health, and material science. And material science actually helped develop the coatings for the World Cup football, the Brazuca football, and we actually have one on our stand which you can win if you go down to stand A46. It's based in Leverkusen, and if you add Leverkusen to Bayer, you get Bayer Leverkusen, which is the football club that the company owns. I'm still waiting for my invite to go along and watch a match there. Okay, so now I want to talk about integrated disease management. Can anyone tell me what's the first step you should take in integrated disease management? Any takers at all?
Cultural practices.
Bang on. Maintaining a healthy grass plant through your cultural practices. So this would be including maintaining adequate nutrition, providing supplemental irrigation if required, scarification, removing thatch, aeration, decompaction, all the measures that you're currently taking, your cultural practices, just to ensure that you have a healthy grass plant. Even to just ensuring that your mower blades are nice and sharp so you're getting a clean cut. And these will all help maintain a healthy grass plant. Can anyone tell me what the next step you can take in an integrated disease management system? Any takers? No? It's a biological process, so introducing resistant cultivars, so introducing grass species that are tolerant of the heights of cut, for instance, that you'll be applying specifically on golf greens, grass species that are resistant or show greater tolerance to diseases, or it may be grass species that are more tolerant of drought conditions. So again, you're maintaining a healthy sward composition in your turf. And finally, the third part of an integrated approach, can anyone tell me what that is? Chemicals, yes. Fungicides in this case, so fungicide applications. So a fungicide application shouldn't be your first port of call. You really should be managing the turf to ensure healthy turf, and then, as I say, introduce cultivars that are resistant or tolerant of diseases before you start to resort to the bottle, as it were. With fungicides, it takes a lot to develop a fungicide. So I just want to briefly talk about the research and the development that goes into developing a new active ingredient through to its introduction, its availability to yourselves as turf managers. When we look at developing a new product, we're looking at the traits that you want as turf managers. These traits we know what they are based on feedback and reviews from yourself. We hold, for instance, customer advisory councils where turf managers tell us what they want, and then we look to try and produce those goods. So from the outset, we'd look at approximately 100,000 or more substances, molecules, and they will be screened through a research process to look at discovering those chemical compounds that display the traits that you're looking for. So whether it be a product that will work in low temperatures, a product that will work in high temperatures, both, drought conditions, a whole array of different types of modes of action, so whether it be systemic or a contact. Once we've done the screening process, we then have, we whittle it down to a couple of substances which will then be further developed through field trials and through laboratory studies. And we're ultimately looking to produce a product which is safe, is not harmful to the environment, and actually achieves the job that you want carried out. Once we've produced a product, it then has to go through the regulatory process. The regulatory process is very stringent. It's becoming more and more stringent from environmental concerns. So a product, active ingredient, can take up to a year and a half going through this regulatory process. And when it's finally approved, we then are able to introduce the new product to yourselves as turf managers. And this product, the time period to carry this out can take up to 10 years. And I'll let the cat out of the bag there. Can anyone tell me how much it could cost approximately to develop a new product? It's actually 300 million euros. It can cost up to 300 million euros. And this is why you don't see many new active ingredients coming to the market. Now, I want to talk about disease resistance management. There are several steps that need to be carried out for disease resistance management. In the UK, there's currently no known resistance in UK turf to fungicides from disease. However, in agriculture, they are seeing some resistance issues with certain diseases and certain active ingredients. So to minimise the potential for resistance, and what I would say before I carry on, resistance comes in two guises. You've got spontaneous mutation by a disease to an active ingredient. So if you apply an active ingredient, a fungicide, the chances of spontaneous mutation, so the disease becomes resistant to that actual fungicide, are about 1 in a million. That's one type of resistance. The second type, strictly speaking, resistance isn't probably the correct word to describe it. It's where you build up a microbial communities that will actually get used to the active ingredients, and then they will start to feed on the active ingredients. And so the efficacy of a fungicide, its longevity, will dramatically reduce if you consistently apply the same fungicides, so that you're building up these microbial communities which will then feed on that fungicide. So to get around this, you need to rotate your fungicide. It's not just the active ingredient that you need to rotate, it's the fungicide groups. And when I talk about fungicide groups, here is the list of all of the fungicide groups that are available to yourselves as turf managers. As you can see, there are only 5 fungicide groups And from those fungicide groups, we get the active ingredients. Now, it's important, point right there. What's important when it comes to your rotation, if you look at the left-hand column, the fungicide groups, that's the column that you want to be rotating, the actual fungicide group. So you want to be rotating vertically from this text here and not horizontally. So I'm sure you're all familiar with strobilurins. Ideally, if you've just applied trifloxystrobin, you wouldn't want your next application to be another strobilurin. There is an exception to that. That's when you're using multi-site fungicides, which I shall come on to in a minute. So ideally, from that list, you want to be rotating vertically, not horizontally. Are there any questions so far? If you have any questions, please shout them out rather than wait till the very end. As you can see, there's only 5 fungicide groups currently available, and it takes up to 10 years, 300 million euros to produce a new active ingredient. But good news, Bayer have actually got a new fungicide group in the pipeline. We actually revealed it, showed demonstrations of it, the trial plots at the STRI Research Days last year. And it's a completely new fungicide group. It's a new chemical class, new active ingredient, and it has a new mode of action. So it would just add to the list of products that you can rotate. It's in the latter stages of the development. It's actually been submitted for the regulatory process, and so, as I say, that process can take a year up to 18 months. So hopefully we'll have some good news for you next year. Okay, so I mentioned multi-site fungicides. I first want to talk about single-site fungicides. The majority of fungicides available to yourselves are single-site fungicides. That is, that they have one mode of action. If I explain it pictorially, if you imagine a dice, and the numbers that I'm going to throw at you now are not the actual numbers, these are just for sort of demonstration purposes. If you imagine throwing a dice, if you think of the number 6 as resistance, and so you throw your dice, you get a 5, you control your disease, throw your dice and get a 6, and that's resistance. The chances in this case of throwing a 6, can anyone tell me what the probability of throwing a 6 is with a single dice? 1 in 6, exactly. So in this case, you have a 1 in 6 chance of getting resistance. Now, a multi-site fungicide, this would be akin to throwing 2 dice. So you've got 2 modes of action in the case of 2 dice. So you throw the dice, you've got 2 3s, control the disease. If you throw the dice and you throw 1 6, so you've got resistance with one mode of action, you've still got control with the second mode of action. And if you were to throw 2 6s, can anyone tell me what the probability of throwing 2 6s is with 2 dice? It's 1 in 36. So you can see dramatically how the numbers increase in your favour, that if you go from 1 mode of action to 2 mode of actions, you go from a 1 in 6, in the case of dice, a 1 in 6 chance of resistance through to a 1 in 36 chance. So all you have to do is get 2 different products, 2 different active ingredients, and pour them together. It's not as simple as that. You can do, but if they're not compatible products, you could have your spray tank turn to jelly, or so in the case of here, you'd have your filters would all get bunged up, your nozzles would all get bunged up, and you'd end up with this sludge that you've got to get rid of. You're still obliged to get rid of it legally, so you'd have to dispose of it through a registered disposal contractor. There's a cost. You've got your 2 active ingredients that you've bought. You haven't been able to use them. You've got to pay for the disposal. You've still got the disease on your greens, so you have to buy another product for which you can spray on the greens or fairways, whichever location you may have. So it boils down to how a product is formulated, how you can combine those different modes of action, different active ingredients. Can anyone tell me what the common denominator is between bread and beer? Yeast, exactly, yes. So if you think of yeast as your active ingredient, the way in which it's engineered or formulated, you can produce completely different products. And this leads me on to stress guard formulation technology. This is Bayer's own method of formulating products. It's not an add-on, it's the way in which all of the ingredients in a product are engineered and how they're combined to achieve the maximum efficacy from those products. I just want to concentrate on 3 points: retention, spreading and uptake, and this relates to the droplet. Rather than try and explain it, I've actually got some video here. The first video will show you a non-formulated droplet landing on a leaf, followed by a formulated droplet landing on a leaf. So here you see the non-formulated droplet, and it hits the leaf and just runs straight through. Whereas the formulated droplet will adhere to the leaf. And that's exactly what you want. You don't want runoff, you want the droplets to stay on the leaf. I'll play that again because it was a bit quick. Here we go. Now to show you on a grass leaf, I have a second video here. This is on a horizontal plane, which is all well and good, but your grass will be on a diagonal or to vertical plane. And you can see here on this video on a diagonal plane, which your grass will more likely be at, how well the droplets can stick. I'll play that just once more, just for completeness. Are there any questions while this video is playing?
Yeah. Is this kind of certain technology in all that when you get things like heritage max and stuff? Because the point is, if I'm spraying heritage max for take-on, I want it down into the soil. So if I'm spraying heritage max, is it just going to stick to the leaf so I'm not getting what I want it to?
Well, I can't speak for competitors' products, but in the case of you're talking about treating take-all, that would be a drench that you'd want. So it would be your water volumes that you'd be increasing to get that drench down to the roots.
So if I'm spraying at 1,000 litres a hectare instead of, say, I don't know, 400 litres a hectare, is that going to make a difference, or is it still going to stick?
It would, because these droplets are applied at the label recommended rate to control a disease, so they're not intended as a drench. If you increase the volume of water, then you would get that drenching effect. Yeah. So that's retention. The next thing that you want your droplet to do is to spread on the leaf. Now, if you imagine your car tyre fully inflated, when it's fully inflated, there's not actually a lot of contact between the tyre and the road. It's a very small contact patch that you have on your tyre. Similar to this droplet as a rough illustration. But if you have a puncture on your car tyre, although the car tyre still has the same surface area, it's deflated and you find that you've got more tyre in contact with the surface, like this. And this is what we aim to achieve with improved spreading on a droplet. So that's retention and spreading. Finally, we have uptake. And this is a video of a droplet of interface on a grass leaf, just to show you how well the uptake through some mesostemic mode of action, how well it can be achieved. And you can see it quickly spreads and disperses around the plant, and it actually will coat both sides and is taken in as a local penetrant. I'll play that once more just so that you can see it again. So that's spread-in, retention and uptake, very important. Now, I have a couple of minutes to spare, so I just want to quickly, oh, didn't mean to press that one, wrong one. Just want to quickly talk about Phytobac, which is another initiative that Bayer has. It's to do with the disposal of washing. So I've talked about you rotating your actives and how you can improve the droplets on the leaf by the correct formulation. With disposal of washings, for your containers, when you're filling up your tank, you're rinsing out your containers and pouring those rinsing into your spray tank. So that's fine. You've washed out your rinsings, your containers correctly. But once you've finished spraying and you then want to wash your tank out, it's common practice to spray the tank washings out on a practice area or a fairway. But is this okay? Would anyone say whether this was okay or not? Yeah. Well, it's common practice, but it's not good practice. And the reason why it's not good practice is because you're applying pesticide residues to an area that doesn't require a pesticide. So we've been developing Phytobac. It's a bio-bed system. Your washings go into this tank. In the case of a large spray tank, it would be on a wash-down pad. It then goes into a sump and is taken into the bio-bed system. It has a couple of different medium, and if you remember earlier, I said one of the key issues for resistance is you're building up microbial communities if you use the same active ingredient that will feed on the pesticide residue, the actual active ingredient. That's the conditions you don't want on your turf. In the biobed, you're actually creating those conditions. You're building up microbial communities which will then feed on the pesticide residues. And they significantly reduce the pesticide from the water, and the water is then released to the atmosphere through evaporation. It's a continuous system, and it's proving to work very well. It's not commercially available at the moment, but it's just something I wanted to make you aware of for the future. So just summarise, and then we can have some questions and answers. So just to summarise, research and development, it takes up to 10 years and 300 million euros to produce a new active ingredient. And this is why you don't see many active ingredients nowadays, especially with the increased regulatory requirements for environmental fate. We do have a new chemical group, active ingredient and mode of action in the pipeline, and that will be available, hopefully. We'll have some good news for you next year, as it's in the regulatory process, the approvals process. It's very important that you rotate your fungicide group. So it's the groups that you want to rotate, not necessarily the active ingredients within a group. So if you remember that text I had there, and this presentation will be made available via the bigger website, you want to rotate vertically through that text that I showed rather than horizontally. So you're not rotating active ingredients that are derived from the same chemical group. And as I said, the difference, the exception is when you've got multi-site fungicides, where you've got two different active ingredients, because you've always got an overlap there. You'll have one distinct different active ingredient, and then you may have a similar active ingredient from the same chemical group. But because of the probabilities of resistance building up, as you saw just from those 2 dice, you significantly improve the or reduce the likelihood in your favour. And then finally, formulation. It's not just a case of putting 2 active ingredients together. They need to be formulated correctly so that you get the best from them. We're actually seeing improved efficacy with our stress guard formulation technology. We're getting better results from the combined effects than we would the individual effects. So it's a synergy, as it were, synergistic effect. That actually concludes my presentation. I just wondered if you have any questions. I'll be more than happy to answer them. Don't all shout at once. I think the key learning points really from what I've talked about today is the integrated disease management process. You must be on top of your cultural practices. First and foremost, you want to produce a healthy grass plant. Then introduce new cultivars, the biological process, to again improve the odds in your favour because you're introducing resistant strains. And then when you need to, ideally using them preventatively, a fungicide, because as soon as you see any signs of a fungicide, if you wait and think, right, I'll leave it a couple of days to see if it will go away, you could end up with a heavily scarred surface, especially if you don't have active growth, and then you could go through the whole winter with a pock-marked, scarred surface, which will have poor playing characteristics. So fungicides are an important part in an integrated disease management regime. That's all I have to say. If you do think of any questions, I shall be available, and my colleagues will be available on stand A46 in Hall A. So we're there all the time. So please come along. We have more information about the formulation, stress guard formulation technology, which we can explain to you in greater detail. We also have the opportunity for you to win a pair of VIP tickets to the England-Lithuania European Cup qualifying match at Wembley, as well as a World Cup Brazuca football. So thank you for your time, and hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.